you to put your name. He couldn't write either. He could hardly read, wrote like a kindergartner. And mind you, and here's the thing. And this is a whole other thing. There are so many undiagnosed mental illnesses and things too, like learning disabilities that go unchecked and unlooked at because the school systems are either A, underappreciated, underfunded, and overwhelmed, so they just can't even keep up with it, or two, they just don't care. And you get these kids that you wonder why these kids are throwing fits and losing their minds in school and acting up and all that kind of stuff. Half of them are doing it because A, they're bored because they're not challenged, or B, they can't do the basics. And so it's like, why would I even try if I can't read? I can't even read the basic book, and you want me to actually go do some work for real. Of course I'm going to act out. And I'm going to act up because I don't want to show you that I'm actually broke. I don't want to show you the truth that I'm embarrassed because I can't really read the board. I'm going to throw a fit and be all trying to be cool and throw a chair. I'm going to do all that stuff because at the end of the day, I can't do what you're putting in front of me. Or what you're putting in front of me is so far beneath and insulting to my intellect that I'm not challenged, and so I'm bored. You know what I mean? It's crazy to me, bro. I think the education, and the last thing, man, I'm random, but this education thing is big for me, bro. Like, 'cause I work with these kids, bro. I see some of the most brilliant kids, bro, in some of the worst neighborhoods, but they get tossed to the side and they get cast away only because we just can't fill in the blank. We just can't. We don't have the resources. We don't have the funding. We can't do that. We can't allow them to have open. And think about this. You in school designed to make you think and navigate your thoughts and learn who you are. And there's certain things we can't talk about. There's certain things we can't discuss. We can't bring up that part of the information. You can't say that. You're not allowed to. That blows my mind because school is a place of learning. How can you learn with limited when you're limited,
We started losing the war on education a long time ago. I can't give you an exact date.
Right.
But it went from what you were talking about, like, where you go and you learn basic life skills, you learn how to be an adult, you learn how to be a human being. And you see a lot more people getting to these higher grades and they can't read. They can't read at even a very basic level, and we take reading for granted. You know what I'm saying? Like, I assume every 30 something year old can read, and some of them they can form sentences, but they can't actually read. And there's more to read. There's reading and there's comprehension, because people can read things and they're just like, okay, I read it, but they don't comprehend it. And comprehension skills are another thing that we're getting away from. And I think it really does start, at home. What does this kid's home life look like? That goes into that's a whole nother discussion, but the cultural problems that we're having in the United States when it comes to children and the future and stuff like that. Where I live back home in Louisiana, like, most of the girls I know are single moms, in their 30s, and they're all their kids are teenagers because they're all having kids at 16, 17, 18 years old, and they're not, for every good mother that I saw, I could probably point out 10 bad mothers, and I'm going to say bad mother. I'm not a parent, but I can tell you're a bad mother if your kid is a bad kid. And if your kid can't read by the age of 10, I'm going to go ahead and say that you're a bad mother. Are there extenuating circumstances? Absolutely, because I'm sure I'll get tore to pieces with, you don't know everybody's story, and we can what if it all day.
It'll be a great conversation.
But here's the thing. It has to start at home, because people are passing on information. But you're talking about these kids that can't read. Once he can have kids, he's going to have kids. So he can't read now. Now his kids probably won't be able to read, and so on and so forth. And so you're dumbing down an entire portion of society. And you know what they're doing? They're taking away the need to read, because now we have information. We have access to everything, whether videos. Everything's on a video now, where you don't have to learn how to read. You can just listen to somebody talk to you. So in the age of ebooks and digital literacy, I'm still building a library. Every book that I read comes in, I buy a hard copy of it. 100% I buy a hard copy. I'm going to build my own library one day. So help me, whatever God you believe in. All right. I'm going to build it one day, because I believe in the value of having written text. All right. It can't be, if an EMP hits and knocks out all technology or blah, 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 blah into the world, I'm still going to have books, and books have knowledge. And I don't have this like sci-fi and military history. I have medical books, anything I can get my hands on that I think is going to be valuable. One of the girls I'm talking to right now just sent me a 12-book volume of the history of the world. It's in Baghdad. I'm going to have to mail it home.
Right.
E for effort. It was a great gift, but man, now I got to mail that shit home. Thank you so much. Yeah. But it's literally, they're all stacked up right now. It's like 3 feet tall. They're big books. They were written, I think, in the 1960s. I don't know where she found that. They might be valuable. I'll have to give them a praise. But I can read that. I can read that and I can comprehend that. And for me, it's such an alien thought to run into somebody that they can't read. Not that I haven't done it before. When I was in the Marines, I ran into plenty of guys that didn't read very well. You know, they could shoot the shit out of a machine gun, but they couldn't read.
Right.
You know, their comprehension skills were very little. And this goes back to the home. What's something we talked about before? Coping mechanisms. How to cope. Kids give up. The generations behind us give up very easily.
And they're allowed to.
They're allowed to when they face adversity. You know, how many times have you failed in your life at whatever you were trying to do? All the time. Dude, I still fail. Like, you know what I'm saying? I have this no quit mentality that I had before the military, you know, from my mom. My mom was a single mom growing up because my dad died. And so like, she made sure that I went to the best school she could find. I went to a private school. I went to a Catholic school, in New Orleans, because she's like, you're not going to public school. She's like, you're not going to get a good education. Probably because I wasn't a good student. I needed the discipline. I needed people to just shove information until I exploded. And one thing I will say about the private schools in that New Orleans area, they're good schools. Yeah. You have, you may not do really well there, but you're going to come out of there, leaps and bounds ahead of your peers. Right. Not the peers that are actually, there are naturally smart people out there they will just succeed wherever they go because they eat up information. But for me, I needed that, man. That put me, even though I didn't go straight to college, I went to the military, it still set me up for later. When I picked up school 2 years ago to get my degree, like, I was a little bit behind, but I caught up.
Yeah, you were caught because it's the foundation. It's the foundation. You had something to build on. I think what's so interesting about it, man, is when you look at different cultures, right? One of the things I found so interesting is they teach, like you said, it starts at home. They teach at home the value of education out the gate. Like you're talking about, even in some more extreme settings or whatever, like in the Asian culture, like if you don't go into some type of high-level field, doctor, lawyer, something like that, like you're frowned upon in some areas of the culture. You're actually frowned upon. Like if you I didn't realize how real that was. I got a buddy of mine. He's he's of Asian descent or whatnot. I don't know if I'm saying that politically correct, but he was talking about how his family, is very different. And like if you're not wealthy or you're not making money or you're not doing something successful or a great benefit to society or whatever the case is, or if you make a certain amount of money, like you're frowned upon within the family. Like you're looked at, and I'm not saying you should put pressure on people like that, but what I am saying is they teach from the birth the value of education and the value of success and the value of being the best possible version of yourself. Like they teach that from the very beginning. And unfortunately, here in American culture, in the West, we have lost that because we have been so coddled by luxury. I don't know if you saw that book, The Coddling of the American Mind. You know what I mean? Like we have become so caught up in, I would say, the glitz and the glam and just all the bells and the whistles, the American Idol society, that we have forgotten the basic structural needs in order to create a beneficial society, a productive society, a society that moves forward and grows and develops, not from a national governmental perspective, but from an individual and state perspective, from a community perspective. Because what happened because I get frustrated a little bit, like when we talk about like neighborhoods and like the hood and like the black culture, the white culture, and all that. I get frustrated because like we look at some of these neighborhoods and some of these environments and we say, oh, this is because of systemic racism, or this is because of the government, or because of so on and so forth. And don't get me wrong, do I think that there's certain elements that do exist? I think one of the bigger issues that I have is the self-accountability. Because if you go back into the 60s and the 50s, when I would say it was far more racist and separated than it is now, the neighborhoods were very different. The hoods, they kept them clean. When Martin Luther King and all of them were walking around here doing what they did, they made sure that there were generals in the neighborhoods that made sure that the neighborhoods kept clean. They kept the houses clean. They made it, even though we were separate, We made sure that our stuff was tight. But somewhere along the lines, right after the 80s and 90s, with the introduction of crack and all that stuff, and when the 90s hit, you had all these other the riots, and you had and to be honest with you, this is a whole other conversation, but the introduction of gangster rap. So I wrote a paper about hip hop in college. I was talking about how, don't get me wrong, I believe that it is a rightful form of expression, but I do think that that particular genre of hip hop had a much more detrimental role on the culture, as opposed to, put it like this, as opposed to it being a means of expressing a very real part of society. Unfortunately, I think it kind of played, in order to bring awareness, I think it was presented in a way that became appealing. And then what happened
is romanticized.
It romanticized it as opposed to bringing awareness to it. And so then now the effect was the opposite. You know what I'm saying? Where instead of it bringing awareness to maybe change, it brought more people into it. It made it interesting. It sold records. It was interesting. It was fun. It was like, wow, this is dangerous.
Would you say that at this point, like, we have a cultural problem in the United States? Like, we're kind of at a crossroads now, where it's kind of like,
yeah,
we need to start moving past. All right. And when I say cultural problem, everyone's going to be like, oh, you just talking about black people. It's like, no, hey man, I'm going to tell you, the white people, we got some issues. Okay. Honestly, I think one of the biggest issues across everything is the romanticization. So yeah, they romanticize these lifestyles. Okay. Yeah. The most dangerous person that you can run into now is a male between the ages of 15 and 25, because they will kill you for cutting them off in traffic. I'm not saying it's never happened in history, but we are having unprecedented levels of just people killing each other over the most mundane things. Yeah. Once again, it's not that it's never happened before, and obviously it could be because it's publicized a lot more, or not publicized. But there's wars being raged on our streets right now. When I left New Orleans, it was a pretty violent area. I didn't work inside the city. I worked in the West Bank. So it's kind of like New Orleans minus. It's just like New Orleans, except it's poorer.
Right.
And the level of violence when I left, this was back in 2018 was when I left. Right. I'm looking at the news. I'm watching the news. I'm talking to my friends back home. It's worse. It's 10 times worse now. The call volume up for emergency services is up. The death toll is, we're second year in a row. I think New Orleans is leading as like the most dangerous city to live in the United States. We're number one at murder capital of the United States per capita. Like that's not something we should be proud of.
Right.
And so at a certain point, I think we have culturally started to degrade into a more animalistic way that spans across all races, all religions, all creeds, whatever the hell you want to say. And we're not good people anymore. Like, we're just not good people. We have missed a gap where we should have had our generation, and then we start passing on the positives and the negatives from our generation, so that the generation behind us gets the positives and leaves the negatives where we left them. They shouldn't be repeating our mistakes. And it's almost like we're in this cycle. We've come full circle back to the cycle, and now we're becoming a violent society again. People want to talk about gun violence and school shootings. Dude, kids used to bring guns to school to show and tell back in like the 40s, 50s, and 60s. And the amount of kids killing kids is out of this world right now.
Well,
it's unbelievable.
I mean, and think about it, it's a lot of, and yeah, it's way worse down there. Yeah, sad part, most teenagers. Yeah, it is a lot of teenagers. But here's the thing. But remember, when we talked about this before, we have created this culture of, we've cultivated this culture. Get your words together, Reese. We have cultivated this culture of, hedonism, whatever I feel is right. It literally, there's no regulation of emotion at all.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? And that goes into men and the women. There's no emotional regulation. And so what's happening is that we've told this generation and this society and raised them in a culture that says, like, okay, here you go. Right now there is a major surge in discrimination cases in schools. So what's interesting about that, though, is that why I bring that up is because this surge in discrimination cases is mainly coming up as basically like, this teacher doesn't like me. Clearly, it's discrimination. We're teaching these kids that anything that's wrong, you can just act on it, and it's either gonna be, you can just say these words, you can act this way, you can do whatever you want, and at the end of the day, somebody gotta pay for it.
Yeah.
You don't need to have, you don't need to just be disciplined. You don't need to just say, you know what, this teacher may not like me. Let me just do my work and get out of here. You know what I mean? Like, so what happens is that there's no, you know what I mean? There's no regulation of emotion anymore. I mean, when you have, think about this, they had a TikTok challenge a while ago where kids were going and hitting the teachers. Like, it was on TikTok. They would record themselves, walk up to the teacher, and just hit them in the face or hit them, you know. And it's like, when you live in a culture, and then we romanticize it, we glorify it, we put it all over the news, we put it all over the going viral, you know what I'm saying? You know, we gonna act out, we gonna, you know, oh, I don't like you, so you said something I don't like, so I need to just, you know, kill you. I need to beat you down, you know what I mean? And the reality is that, and that's not, and it's not just violence. You're talking about, okay, you wanna sleep with this person? Do it. There's no, you don't need to know nothing. You don't need to see nothing. You don't need to know anything about them. You just do whatever. You know, it's literally.
There's no consequences.
There's
no more consequences, right. And there's no more self-accountability.
Right.
You know, and when you want to talk about and you can talk about that as it spans a bunch of different subjects, right. But at the heat of the moment, you know, going back to all the way to the beginning, at the beginning of this talk, we're talking about how, you know, as we advance in technology, are we becoming softer? And you bring everything we talked about now, and the answer is yes. As we have progressed as a society technologically, as human beings, we're becoming softer. We're becoming softer physically because people, you know, there's a war being waged between people who are, you know, into fitness and people who are not, you know, body positivity, which is a great thing. That doesn't mean that you're not fat. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm sorry, just because you can be positive all you want, you still going to get diabetes and heart disease. At a certain point, there's no accountability because now everything is so off limits to talk about. You have to tread so carefully when it comes to talking about anybody's feelings about it used to be that religion and politics were the two things that you just didn't talk about with people because that would set people off. Now it's a norm to talk about religion and politics with people, and you can't talk about them being fat.
Anything else
about anything else, which I think is absolutely crazy. And it all comes down to zero self accountability. We're not holding ourselves accountable. I think the hardest part about growing up and becoming an adult is I'm definitely not a perfect person. I've made pretty big mistakes in my life. I've been held accountable, and I've held myself accountable, and I try not to do those things anymore. And anytime I talk about it or people ask me about it, I try to tell them, like, this is where I fucked up in my life. Don't do that unless you want to go through the things that I had to go through.
Absolutely.
I'm not saying I had the worst life in the world, the hardest life in the world, but I made my life a lot harder for a pretty extensive amount of time because I made the wrong decisions because I was emotionally not mature enough to make the right decision, and I was emotionally not mature enough to ask for help. So emotional accountability, you know, emotional and mental accountability, self-accountability in general is something that we're lacking in society, and you're seeing it with the generations coming. I hate to harp on just the kids behind us, but like honestly, the generation coming up behind us, zero accountability, zero accountability. I think you could roll that right into just about anything, any of the major topics you want to talk about, whether it's gun violence or abortion or, you know, divorce rates, you know, single mothers with multiple children from multiple men. You know, it's them not holding themselves accountable before those actions have happened. That's where a lot of this stuff is stemming from.
Yeah. There's no standard.
You said hedonism, which is a good word, but it's basically people wanting to do whatever the fuck they want and not suffer the consequences.
Right.
People ask me as a libertarian all the time, you believe in doing whatever you want. I said, I believe in doing whatever I want as long as it doesn't hurt anybody else. People hurt other people nowadays with their own actions and their own feelings and all that other crap that it's so hard to navigate. That's why I like working over here in the Middle East. Like things make a lot more sense in my life now. Than if I was back home, you know, my life is very simple.
But, you know,
don't get die and try to get a paycheck.
Yeah, I mean, you know, the reality is this: it's like we have this. The reality is we have this twisted sense of freedom, right? Mm-hmm. You know, it's this new sense of like people don't understand is that freedom is not doing whatever you want to do. Freedom is not just doing whatever. That's not what freedom is. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Freedom is being able to do what you will to do and do what you want to do within the bounds of the people and things around you. You know what I'm saying? Like, because absolute freedom where you just do whatever you feel like, that's chaos. That's not even freedom, because then you become a slave to your impulses. You know what I mean? You become a slave to those feelings. And so you're not free. because now you have no ability. Like I heard, I think I mentioned this before, I don't know, but there's a guy named Michael Todd. He's a pastor or whatever, but he made a statement that I thought was interesting. He said, the best version of you is the disciplined version.
Yeah.
You know, the reality is that real freedom is being able to have impulses and discipline those impulses for the purpose of being able to fulfill purpose, to be able to go forth and be successful, build the career and the life that you want, to be able to live how you choose to live without stepping on other people's toes, you know, that kind of stuff. Without hurting other people, I would say, without infringing on someone else's ability to be able to operate. You know, because think about it, if you're talking about freedom is, oh, I should be able to do whatever I want to do. Okay, well, if I feel the same way and I walk up and punch you in the face, you can't be mad. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just, so there are boundaries. It's freedom to do what you want within the boundaries of humanity.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Of society. You know, when we live in this world of chaos, you know, where it's just, it's lasciviousness, it's lawlessness, it's all of these things, you know. And it was interesting, you know, I got to throw this in there. What's interesting is that it talks about all of these things, you know, obviously biblically. You know, I'm sure you've probably read some of the stuff. It talks about, you know, some of the, you know, you read it like Timothy and Peter and like Matthew, and they talk about like in those days, and obviously we've been in the last days for a long time, but in those days it talks about as society begins to draw closer to its collapse and the end of society and the return of the Lord, you see a lot of these things that they listed were very clear and very much similar to what we're seeing today. And it's very similar to what we saw at the end of Rome and the end of Greece. And as the societies begin to collapse, you begin to see these same principles. You begin to see these same characteristics. You know, the hearts of men grow cold, the lawlessness, the lovers of themselves, you know, the narcissism, the lack of, it even said, you know, it talks about how like mothers and fathers, well, children will hate their parents and parents will hate their children and like all this kind of stuff. It goes in detail about some of the stuff that we're seeing. You know, and so that, you know, and that brings up a whole nother, you know, arena of conversation. But it's just a matter of like, we are at a, like you said, we're at a crossroads. And I tell my kids this all the time. I say, listen, you guys are about to get the keys, and you're going to drive this thing into destiny or destruction. And that's reality. Right? I mean, right now it's headed in the wrong direction. We are headed in the wrong, you know, and that's reality. And we got to be aware of that stuff. We need to wake up and see where we are as a nation. And we need to, not as a nation, as a race, as a human race, like we need to wake up and see the realities of where we are mentally, emotionally, spiritually, socially, all of this stuff. Because until we can look in the mirror and realize, dang, we are jacking some stuff up, we're going to keep going down the same paths. We're going to keep doing the same things over and over again. And society will collapse right under our feet, and we'll be sitting up there looking like, dang, what happened? You know what I'm saying? We'll be wondering, how did society fall when we were the one kicking the bricks out in the first place? You know what I mean? And so it's so like I said, we're in a very, so it's funny, I'm gonna actually do a you know, I don't know if I told you, you know, I'm writing a book, right?
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, man, I just a couple years ago, man, just really had this idea just dropped in my heart, man. So I'm actually writing a book, and it's a lot of different thoughts, a collective kind of. It's going to be a book of thought, you know what I mean? Book of thoughts. But there's a particular thing my father used to always say. He used to always say, you know, son, you understand something. You know, we live in American Idol society. You know what I'm saying? That's how he talks.
Yeah.
Like he actually talks. He's like, my dad is like the stereotypical New York. Like he's Brooklyn, you know what I'm saying? Yeah, okay, let me tell you something. Da, 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 da. You know, but he used to always talk about the world was an American Idol society. And I began to really unpack that. And if you really look at it, man, we have become so superficial. We got the glitz and the glam, and we put the makeup and cover the mask. We get so caught up in the colors and the pictures that we forget and lose sight of the pain, the brokenness. We lose sight of the consequence. We lose sight of responsibility, accountability. Because think about it, that doesn't exist on TV. You know what I mean? That doesn't exist on social media. You know, you can do whatever, say whatever. There's no consequence. There's no repercussion. You know what I mean? That's why people get online, internet thugs. You know what I mean? They get online and they, oh yeah, bro, I'll do this. And think about that. Think about how that looks. Yeah, think about how that looks though. You on the screen. Yeah, I did this and da da, and I'll do this and da da da. But if you think about it, you sitting there in your SpongeBob pajamas on the computer on the keyboard. You know what I mean? Yeah, I'll do this
Yeah,
to you and
no,
get it.
you're 100% correct. Like, and once again, technology is starting to make us soft. Not everybody. I think technology has given a lot of people a lot of access to a lot of things to make them stronger mentally, and like we talked about like the self help and the discipline books, and there's some really good speakers out there that I like to listen to. I listen to them, everybody with a grain of salt. It's just like going through a tool store, man. You're looking for the tools that work for you, and you put them in your little bag and you take them with you. Not everything they say applies to you. Not everything they say
Right,
is going
of
to work
course.
for you. But at the end of the day, it all goes back to, if you're going to be a human being, and we can talk about like masculinity sometimes, but, I would say for men more than anything, is we are in a weird time right now where, there's a huge portion of society that wants us to remain, protective and manly. And there's another portion of society that tells us that we don't have to, not only should we not do that, they don't want us to do that anymore.
Right,
Um,
right.
I,
Masculinization. Yeah.
I'm a firm believer that as a man you have a duty to protect, you have a duty to provide, and you have a duty to be as strong. And I can't remember who said, I don't know if it was Jordan Peterson or one of those other guys was talking about, be a monster, man. Be a
Yeah, that's
monster in
Jordan
everything that
Peterson.
you
Yeah.
do. Like be so disciplined and so honed in your skills and your abilities and your wisdom and your knowledge and your education that there's nothing you can't survive. We talked about survivability against adaptability. Be able to survive any situation, but adapt to it at the same time. You should be walking away from everything that almost hurt you or killed you or broke you much stronger than you were
Right.
before. And we're not seeing that in the numbers that we used to. You know, for every action is an equal and opposite reaction. So what we're seeing now today is like, as we've had this huge progressive movement, I'm going to call it a progressive movement of softness. You're now starting to see a progressive movement of strength. That's starting to bust, and people are like, wait. What do you mean you don't want us to
Yeah.
work out? What do you mean you don't want us to learn,
Right.
how to do this, or be
Yeah. Right.
self-sufficient or independent, independent thinkers and stuff like that. Same thing when it comes to men and women. For years, the men have been just getting bashed by women, left and right, that we're dogs, we're trash, we're, treat men like this. Men are disposable. And now that's given rise to people like, God, I hate to say his name out loud, but Andrew Tate. People are starting to, imagine your daughters and your sons listening to people like that. If you don't like their message in your ears, imagine those are the people who are now teaching your daughters how to be women and your men how to be men. You know what I'm saying? So for every action, there's an equal opposite reaction. Be careful what you're out there spreading,
You'll
because
get
someone's
just
going
you'll
to.
get it just as much the extreme side. It's the pendulum swing, you know what I mean? It's just like
Mhm.
with, it's just like with politics, you know what I mean? When it goes hard right, don't get it twisted. Before long it'll be a hard left swing and then a hard, right now we saw that with the midterms, you know what I mean? And it wasn't as great of a swing, but there was a
Mhm.
major shift. There was a red shift because of the
Yeah,
wokeness and all the stuff going on. People are like, wait a minute, this stuff is getting out of control.
it went too far.
Um, yeah, you're going a little too far. We're going to have to go pull the horses back. But it's funny, side note, you see that Andrew Tate just got arrested.
Yeah, he's out of jail though.
Yeah, he's out
He'll it's
now, of course, but
now
he had
now
just got
whether or
hit
not
with
it's
a,
it's
with
a
a sex trafficking, like, and you already said when he got arrested,
what's it?
he said the Matrix has attacked me. He was talking about how, because he always talks about the system and how they try to take you out when you speak against their systems and all that kind of stuff. He got canceled on social media. He
Mhm.
went around it, found a way around it. Now he's back just even bigger than he was before. And then now it's like, oh, dang. Now all of a sudden he gets this sex trafficking accusation or whatnot, a criminal organization and all that.
He's another person. Like I said, he's just like everybody else that I scroll through and I see. I definitely don't agree with everything that he says, but he actually, now, do I think that they're his own organic thoughts? Sorry, Andrew. No, I don't. I think he's listened to some other extremely smart people and incorporated their ideas and their stuff into life. But there are some things that, one thing he said, and once again, I don't know if I can attribute this to him 100%.
Right,
Men, he says, women are born inherently valuable because they can give life. Men have to go out and make themselves valuable in
right.
society today.
Yeah.
And that really hit me hard, because I'm sitting here looking
Yeah.
at like what I do with my life and everything like that. And then I look around, like you go scroll through a dating app, dude. How many women on there, they're like, I need my man like this, and this, and they look like Medusa. you know, or they got 2 kids. They got 2 kids, and they're like, I'm looking for somebody in my life. But just remember that my kids come first. I'm like, obviously, it ain't the kids that come first. You know, Sandra. Hopefully, nobody named Sandra in here. That was just my organic lady name. You know, but you know, it's just funny the societal double standards that we have in life, and that's what you're starting to see. Is like you've had this huge upshift over the last 10 years of progressive and super liberal ideas, and now you're starting to see that like conservatism is making a way back. We haven't reached this point yet. We haven't reached this point where we're all kind of like trying to figure out how to get along. We're still polarizing.
Right, it's that tug of war. It's the pendulum swing. You know what I mean? And the thing about it, if you know anything about physics, pendulums will swing forever. You know what I mean? Like until there's a shift or until a third thing comes in to stop it, it'll just keep doing this. You know, and
I'm sorry.
No, you good.
I was just gonna say, I do have like more liberalized friends that I speak, because I think it's important to talk to people. I need to understand how you got to your way of thinking. Just like I want people to understand why I think the way I think. I think it's really important to sit down and talk to people, you know, and really get to know them and be like, hey, so like you believe this about this, but like why? Like what drove you to make that, you know, to come down with that decision that that's the way you believe about this subject, so on and so forth. And I was having the discussion with, you know, we are never going to get out of this pendulum swing of this side ideas or that side of ideas, that the other side of ideas, unless we start to understand why those people arrived at where they are, and what can we do so that we both get something that we want out of the deal. You know, we're not compromising anymore. The best example I can of this conversation that I had a super liberal, it was a woman I was talking to at the time, you know, and it was right around the time that Roe versus Wade got overturned. You know, and me, like I don't have a baby and I can't get pregnant, so like it wasn't a huge shocker to me, and I'm a huge person on you know, states' rights, and so for something that the federal government implemented to be turned over and give the power back to the states, huge win for states' rights. In my mind. And I said, but the problem is now we're not going to sit down at the table and talk about this and discuss this, you know, logically. All right. I said, I was a paramedic. The age of viability in Louisiana, I think, was 23 weeks or 24 at a time. You know, it's like this big. You know what I'm saying? Its chances of survival on its own outside the womb were very small. I said, I understand on one side of the aisle that there are people that believe that from birth, from heartbeat or from conception, it's a human being. And that's fine. Everyone's entitled to that opinion. I said, on the other side, there's some people that would probably be okay with delivering a baby and then stomping on it. 2 ends of the extreme.
Right, two very extreme ends of the right.
I said, me as a thinking man, I said, people are going to get abortions, whether we say it's illegal or immoral or not. It's going to happen. I said, so instead of us sitting here, we're going to, you know, I can argue from my standpoint. You can argue from your standpoint, you know, talking about the girl I was speaking to. I said, what if we just start in the middle? I said, viability is 23 weeks. Let's talk about it from 23 weeks. Let's pretend like there's no extreme left and no extreme right. Right. Let's talk about this both morally and scientifically from this middle point of view. And let's go from there, as opposed to me arguing from one side and you arguing from another side, because we're never going to meet in the middle. I said, let's start in the middle, and then we'll figure out what kind of covers both of our, like what satisfies enough of each of what we believe in, to where we're not willing to literally kill each other over it to save, you know, to possibly save lives. And it kind of blew her mind a little bit. She's like, I just didn't expect the conservative. I was like, first of all, I'm not conservative. I'm not. Like I said, I want to own machine guns, not pay taxes, and smoke pot. So however I can get to that is how I'm trying to get to that. Right. Because I can't do any of those things right now. Right. So as far as I'm concerned, this house is a prison. Right. But you know, it's just like, but I'm willing to sit down and talk to people. Like, I want to know what you like. Tell me why do you believe so strongly in what you believe to where you're willing to yell at me in the street about it?
And you may find that you may learn something if you find out why people think the way that they do. And it's not saying you have to agree with everything. It's just a matter of, okay, let's take the time to understand, okay, you believe this because of this. You believe this because of this. Now, what is the factual information about this? You know what I mean? Like, at the end of the day, okay, cool. You know, you believe you should be able to punch everybody in the face. I think you shouldn't just walk around and punch people in the face. Now, not saying that it wouldn't be beneficial in some aspects, you know what I mean? But at the end of the day, let's talk about how does this benefit society? Does this benefit society or not? And how much does it benefit society or not? You know, and then let's talk about it. So it's man, it's so many things, bro. There's so many things, man. But anyway, we are at that hour, man. So we got to get, because we can sit up here and get this thing rolling, man. But hey, the great conversation today, bro. Man, I appreciate the insight, everybody who tuned in, man. Shout out to Fisher 1922, man. You had some great points, great thoughts, man. Appreciate you. And we'll see y'all.
Yeah, make sure you guys come join our YouTube channel. Come subscribe. We're gonna be dropping the episodes there. We'll be dropping some shorts. We're gonna be adding a lot more in the coming days once I can figure out how to do editing and stuff on my end, because I'm technologically behind the rest of the world. So that way Reese ain't doing it all by himself. But yeah, come subscribe to the channel. It's under 0 Foxtrot 2813 on YouTube. Z and F are capitalized. So if you guys have any questions, just follow Reese. Reese can get you there, or you can follow me and I'll get you there, and we're all going to get there together, and hopefully we all become a little more enlightened in the future. So thanks for the great show today, man.
Yes, sir. All right, bro. Peace.